welcome and thank you for tuning in. My name is Melanie Naranjo and I am the CPO at Ethena. I am so thrilled to be chatting with Sara Marzitelli, head of people at Sondermind, in our latest edition of How We Tackle People Stuff at Ethena. Sara, I want to say first and foremost, thank you so much for chatting with us. We always love chatting with our customers and learning more about their experience, both with us and just overall in their career. And so with that said, I actually would love to start by just kicking it over to you. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Melanie, and thank you for having me. And happy Friday. Definitely happy to be here. I'm Sara Marzitelli, like Melanie mentioned. I'm the head of people at Sondermind. I've been here for just shy of 3 years. We are a mental health company based in Denver, looking to provide access to people more easily. And so we have a really incredible mission as a company. We're about just shy of 300 people spread across 32 states, I want to say. And I've been in the startup space for the last, I don't know, 10 plus years, helping companies scale, mostly joining around Series C and then taking them to whatever that next phase of growth is. Prior to that, I actually spent my career starting on the legal sector. I thought I wanted to go to law school, be a lawyer. And so I was a labor and employment paralegal in-house for some really cool consumer brands, J. Crew, Zara, Pearson Education, which makes a lot of college textbooks, and then some other fun little niche brands as well. Um, Decided ultimately I didn't want to go to law school. And here we are leading people teams, 16 years later.
I have heard so many similar stories of people winding up into HR in these roundabout ways and all these varied experiences. I also originally considered law school, and I remember somebody my senior year of college just being like, "No, girl, don't do it." Don't do it. And you know what? I think I'm good with my choices in the end. My gosh, so much empathy for you and your company. 30 plus states represented. You must have just so many different laws and compliance rules that you have to keep in mind for all your employees.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. We actually started the company started based in Denver. Our CEO has been in Denver for quite some time, and then we actually scaled pretty aggressively through the pandemic.
Yep.
And everyone was initially based in Denver in our office. We've had a couple different locations, and you know, we are pretty much a remote first company at this point. We still have an office in Denver, which is lovely, but I'd say about 20% of our employees are in Colorado, the wider Colorado, not just the Denver metro, and then really everywhere and anywhere in between, which can make things challenging, as you know. But
Yep.
it's also nice because we have a pretty diverse group of employees who work for us from different experiences, different walks of life, which makes it really great.
Love that. Certainly can't judge. We also are fully remote and just have employees all across the country. And it's great. Yes, there are a lot of laws to keep in mind. Yes, there are a lot of tax filings that we have to do at the end of each quarter.
Mhm.
Are worth it for the wide variety of talent that we can bring to the company. So let's shift gears a little bit. I'd love to chat a little bit about your experience with Athena. First of all, how did you come to learn about us? And second, how did you end up deciding to move forward with us?
Yeah, great question. My good friend Bridget, who I used to work with, actually knew Roxanne from a previous life. And I was introduced to Roxanne, I think it was in 2018 or 2019. It was pretty early when you guys were kicking things off.
Very early.
Um, I was at a real estate tech company at the time. And again, like Sondermind, we had employees really all over the US. I tend to lead with a little more of a compliance eye. It's probably just from my background being a labor and employment paralegal. So I was very exposed to requirements, what you had to do to stay up to date, whether it was like policy or procedure or anything else that, various states required. Um, and what we used in the past, I've done a couple different things, in some scenarios, we would bring in law firms to do compliance training. And, nothing against law firms or lawyers. Maybe one of the reasons I didn't want to, ultimately go to law school, but very antiquated, outdated. It doesn't really stick. It's this thing that people feel like they have to do. And it's kind of like a check the box requirement for a lot of companies to say, hey, we're going to do, you know, harassment prevention training and compliance training, and we need to do it. And this is the easiest way for us to do it. So I think just in general, to circle back to your question, you know, what was out there in the market at the time was so antiquated and outdated and not relevant and not relatable. And it was really hard to logistically figure out how to train the right people in the right states at the right time and make it more enjoyable and engaging. And so that's why we brought Ethena on. I I think this is the third company I've implemented it at. And I think one of my favorite parts, I will say, is the micro learnings are really, really great. You know, it tends to be top of mind for people when you do it more regularly. And so I know for me, our compliance training, I think, was due last week, but I found different parts throughout my day or week over a series of, months, whatever it might be, that I could just go in and have these little nuggets. And then it's more top of mind, not just for me, but for everybody else. And so it's not like a set it and forget it. It's you kind of have this continuous learning, which I think makes it more top of mind for all of our employees.
I really enjoyed that as well. When I first joined, first of all, I remember when I was interviewing, they sent me a small micro learning, and in it was a comic strip, and I had never in my mind imagined that harassment prevention training could be done through via
Mhm.
comic strip. It was wild, and then completely agree that these micro trainings are so good in the moment. You could send something during Pride Month. You could send something right before you're heading off for a leadership offsite or a team offsite to make sure that everybody remembers the rules of how to interact with each other
Mhm.
in person. And it really does keep it top of mind for everyone. And agree on the auto assignments as well. I feel like I came for the content and then I stayed for the tech. It really just automates
Yeah.
every assignment by state, by employee type, just amazing. I'm curious to know, I mean, I'm biased, so I could talk about this forever. You did mention that you have brought us with you to multiple companies. Is there anything in particular, in addition to what you've just shared, that really makes you keep coming back as opposed to exploring other vendors out in the market?
Yeah, and I'd say since 2018 when I learned about Athena, or 2019, whatever it was, you can correct me. There's probably been more vendors that have popped up who are following a similar model, and trying to leverage more of like the tech employee experience component of things. Um, I think one of the things is that I really like the refreshed content that Athena delivers all the time, depending on what type of training we're doing. It can be very relevant. I remember, I forget where I was. It might have been common at the time, but right around the pandemic, like I mentioned, when we had everybody very dispersed, some of the trainings really focused on very, very particular events that were happening at that moment in time, and I think could make it really relatable for people. It's not just these actors who are talking about these scenarios that may or may happen. It's real life events that you're bringing into the conversation, which I think make it more relatable. I also really like the examples that they give about, you know, different types of companies. Hey, this might have happened at this company. And you're like, oh, yeah, I've seen that happen at a place that I've worked. That makes total sense. So relevant content, how you can train people have different ways of absorbing information. Um, I like to read, but I also like to listen depending on what I'm doing. So having different modules for that is great. And then I just really love how over the years that I've been using Athena, you've really expanded, I'd say, the content or the type of trainings that you can offer. And so you have this sort of one-stop shop where you can pick from a series of courses, which is great. That might be relevant or not to your business. Um, so I've liked that's really expanded, and it's really why I keep coming back. I mean, super easy to implement. I don't have to worry too much about it. I know people are doing it. People talk to me about it all the time, little snippets here and there. Oh, in the training, I just saw X, Y, or Z, or I remember that thing. So I know it's sticking for people, which is really great.
Let's dig in there because I was looking at some of your company's completion stats and they're pretty wild. You've got a 94% completion rate right now and a 97% positivity rate. Tell me a little bit more. What do you think makes your employees so likely to complete this training? Understanding that it is compliance training, and why are they so happy about it? Why are they giving such high positivity ratings?
Yeah, good question. So we roll out different trainings at different points throughout the year. We typically send, I want to say, one communication that it's launching, and we may remind people at the monthly all hands about what's coming up. It's not like other HR things that I have to constantly remind people to do, which is great. So that can be a result of like the Slack reminders or the email reminders or the nudges that you get. And then again, I think because we have such a diverse population of employee, we have, people who like to work in the morning, people who like to work at the night, people who like to listen, people who like to read, all sorts of different modules. They have the option to do it on their own time and at their own pace. Within some reasonable time frame that we give folks. And so I think it's really just personalized to our demographic of people and how we want to roll out that learning that makes it really digestible for folks and easy to do. It's not like, oh, I have to sit through, or I have to block 2 hours of my day to like do this thing that I'm not going to retain or I'm not going to absorb. And it's really hard for anybody to take that time out of their day. So I think it's just a little micro learnings throughout, and training when you want and however much you want at a time is really, really great.
Big plus one there. I have to say, people often think that just because I work at a compliance company that I must myself be obsessed with compliance training. And the truth is, I think like anyone else, and I'd be curious to hear if you have the same experience. Yes, I'm an HR leader, but almost because I'm an HR leader, sometimes these trainings can be especially, they can feel especially burdensome because I already know all this stuff. Why do I have to take this training again? And what I actually did last time, and it was amazing, is I just listened to it like a podcast while I was cooking dinner.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And of course, it still did checks on learnings to make sure I was paying attention. So I had to pause every once in a while to answer the questions. But it was so nice to not have to sit for 2 hours at my desk and instead be able to go about my day to day while completing this training.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that sticks out is that Athena brings like the feeling of it, like it feels very human in a way. Not only is the content relatable, but to your point, it's very conversational, right? It's people talking back and forth, and it is almost like listening to a podcast, which I think people just generally enjoy doing. So it doesn't really feel like training for training's sake, which again is maybe why people love it. Or, I hate to say it, but what they've been exposed to in the past, the bar is just so low. And that's really unfortunate. A lot of companies should be thinking about different ways to make the not so fun stuff a little more fun and enjoyable. But I would really encourage people, to I'd say to dig into different platforms and technologies and like look at how people are doing things differently, because there's a lot of ways to make the not so fun stuff more fun and better and more digestible.
What a great transition into our final question for today, which is, what advice would you give to someone who is considering switching to Athena?
Yeah, I think for me, it's really about, if I tie it back to the people lens, about the employee experience, like what type of experience do you want to give people? Um, Going back to recognizing that not everybody learns in the same way, not everybody receives feedback in the same way, not everybody likes to do things in the same way. And so one of the things that I mentioned already is that Athena really allows you to make it customizable. You can even bring in your own policies or whatever is specific to your company, which is great. And I think especially when people leaders, and in particular if you're a people leader of one, which can be very difficult, you're like, oh my goodness, it's just something else I have to do. It might be easier to just have something that you've always done, but the implementation's super easy. The data that you get from it, the reporting on it is really great. You can start measuring, and the more you can measure, the better you can make improvements with anything that you're doing. And so I would just encourage people, think outside the box, look for what else is out there, and not accept the status quo.
Sarah, I'm going to dig into just one of those things before I let you go here. I think you touched on something so important, which is the implementation piece, because I think
Hmm.
oftentimes people want to switch. Maybe they know that there are better options out there, but they are worried about just how much work will go into the implementation
Oh yeah.
process. Can you share, as somebody who has literally gone out of your way to implement Athena at multiple companies, tell us a little bit about what the implementation process looks like and how you get over that fear of switching over and the work that comes with switching to a new vendor.
Yeah, I do want to call out. It's been almost 3 years that we've implemented, so bear with me. But really easy CSV upload, I believe, is what we did. Gets everybody into the system. Um, so I mean, it's honestly as simple as that. I mean, once people are in the system, you just upload your policies and configure it the way you want to. It doesn't take a lot of time at all. And I always joke, there was one point when I managed an IT function, and I'm like the last person who should be managing an IT function, since sometimes I can barely turn on a computer. But if I could figure out how to do it and do it really quickly, I think anybody can. It is that easy. Customer support, when we've needed it, we haven't needed it much, but has been really, really easy to work with. The team's been amazing, and we've just had a really good experience. And I'm sure you all will continue to keep building the platform and making it better, and just enhancing the type of learnings that you're offering. So I'm excited to see some of those and where we might be able to roll out in the future. I've seen stuff like, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's like SOC 2 training options, and there's all these different compliant options now. It's not just harassment prevention training, which is where you guys started. So it's really great to be able to have this one system that you can go to and implement for really everything you need across security and training.
Love that so much. Sarah, thank you so much for chatting with us today. We really, really appreciate learning from you. I'm excited to keep this partnership going and, reach back out if any questions ever come up. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for
Thank
tuning in.
you. Thank you.